Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Gold Coast Speakers podcast, where speakers have conversations so that you can learn more about a speaker, what they talk about, and who they are as a person. And my name's Tracey. Please excuse my voice. I have a little bit of a cold left over at the minute. But I have the pleasure today to talk with Jodi Brown. And I actually know Jodi, so it's a real pleasure and honour for me to get to speak to him today. And I've actually personally heard Jodi speak a number of times. So I'm really excited to get to ask you the questions today, Jodi. And so, first up, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Tracey. Good to jump on. We've done a podcast before, so it's good to do it in another iteration of it. So thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, we're talking about a few same theme but different questions today. So, you're going to throw a few little different ones at you today. So let's get started. Your topic is all around mental health and personal growth. So, what was the moment that made you realize mental health and personal growth needed to be spoken about differently, especially in workplaces and communities?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I think the big one was I was attending some workshops over the years around the topic because I've had an interest in it in a while. I saw a lot of theory kind of being spoken, but avoiding the reality. And I think you and I went to one of these together, and you could tell the way it was delivered. Yeah, it was good. It was ticking a box, compliance driven. There was theory. There was, this is what we need to do. But it kind of didn't really, it didn't have the juice behind it. And you could tell by the room wasn't, and I found that a lot. So what I kept finding was there was just box ticking, stats, surface level sessions. The real conversations were happening really quick or not at all. People were shutting down or switching off and thinking, this is not for me. And so what I think it boils down to is there was a gap between knowing and doing. That was kind of the problem. So the knowledge was there, what we need to do, but there was a bit of a gap. And I think that's where I had to turn it into something that was human, practical, and relatable.
I think you were very kind in saying it was okay. I thought it was terrible. So you were being nice. I
I don't
was.
like talking smack about others, other facilitators. Look, the guy, he knew the content, but it was more of a compliance exercise, I think.
Yeah. So you work across businesses and communities and even the youth spaces. What do you see as the biggest mental health challenge cutting across all of them right now?
Look, pressure everywhere, silence underneath. So, if you take adults, we live in such a fast-paced world these days. There's a pressure to perform. There's a pressure to hold it together. There's a pressure to provide for your family. When it's young people, pressure to succeed, to fit in, to keep up. There's a bit of a universal belief that I'm the only one that's going through this. I'm the only one struggling. And that leads to silence, and silence then leads to isolation and shame. And, shared experiences reduces the shame and kind of unlocks that growth.
You forget about that sometimes, about how people actually feel about a topic. And I think, I've seen you speak and you always handle it so well, that line between helping people be vulnerable enough that they can share, but also not crossing so far that they go into that realm where they spiral downwards. It's a real important thing to do.
Yeah, that's something I've been working on as well because, nowadays there's a thing called trauma-informed care. And there is a line. You don't want to go too far. You don't want to go into graphic detail, but it's also important to share stories that are relatable as well. So, yeah, it's getting that balance right of not freaking people out, but still delivering that relatable type of content.
How does your lived experience shape the way you speak and facilitate compared to, that more traditional mental health education?
Yeah. So I don't speak from a pedestal. You'll never see me behind a lectern. I'm always asking, is there a roving mic if it's a big audience? And I prefer to be on the floor with them. So I'm speaking from the center of the room, basically. I'm just another person that's just like them, been through experiences. I'm not pretending that growth is linear. It's messy, it's dirty, you have to be vulnerable sometimes. It's honest about leading while caring about stress and doubt that's there. Like we've all got that, so I don't have to pretend on it. And so, yeah, focus on the functioning side of it, not on perfection. And so sometimes you'll hear me. There'll be some ums, there'll be some ahs, or I'll get caught up in a story. I forgot where I've started or finished, or what was I talking, on that little conversation piece. But that I think gives people permission to engage without judgment.
I think that's the key, what you just said. You mentioned when you were talking, you may not have realised it, but you said conversation. And I think that's a key is when you're in this topic that it feels like it's a conversation and they're not being preached at. And I think that's what
Yeah,
you
and it's
brought
how
up.
I open. Yeah, I probably did it when the last one that you saw, but I always, I give a couple of agreements at the start around, it's the type of topic, so I've got to be sensitive on that. But then the other side of it is, yeah, it's going to be a conversation. I don't want to just stand here talking at people because they're just going to, that's just going to flick over them. Whereas if it's a conversation, it's going to be more real.
So, what do you think it is that makes your talks and workshops land with audiences who might, you know, switch off as soon as they hear mental health conversations?
Yeah. I guess I remove a lot of the fluff and the jargon. So, there's parts of it depending on the talk. So some of the talks is training and you got to get into that then. But when it's more of a workshop or a keynote or something like that, it's getting rid of the fluff and the jargon side of it. It's not lecturing on definitions. Some of the time when you see people talking about mental health, they're getting right into the nitty-gritty parts of it. And you don't necessarily need that. It's giving people language to what they already feel inside. And then, pairing that with practical tools that they can use straight away. So you can walk out of there grounded in, you've got you've got some real stuff. And that way audiences see themselves in the examples. So it's not, I'm not talking at a PhD level, considering I never went to university anyway. So that's easier to not fake, and just make it more relatable.
Yeah. I think when I heard you present one time and you made a really good point because you don't know what's happening for people in the audience. Could be going through their own mental health challenge at the time because you don't know. And I think the example you used is like if someone's broken a leg, you can see they've broken a leg. They've got a cast, but if they've got a mental health challenge, how do we know? And you'd have to be aware of that as a speaker. Like, do you start to pick up the people you go, oh my goodness, yeah, I think something's going on for them? Like, do you have a bit of an intuition where you can sort of start to see that in an audience?
Yeah, a little bit, I think. And like I know the stats, like, on average 20% of the room's going to be going through something. And so it's going to be there in every room. And yeah, look, it's tough from stage, in bigger audiences, but often, yeah, some of the body language, some of the way that they might respond indicates that there's stuff going on. So again, it's about adapting to the room. Some rooms, like if I'm in a room full of, out of mine site, as an example, in Kalgoorlie, bunch of miners. So, 30 blokes all sitting cross-armed, don't want to be part of this. So, there's a lot of that middle-aged white guy stigma that still, I'm in that age group of, leading cause of death is suicide and all that sort of stuff. So you kind of know the demographics walking into a room, what you're kind of going to get. And so, might drop a few swear words and things in the right context in those types of situations. So disarming the room a bit. And then you'll start to see people sort of come out of themselves a bit as well. And once they realize that, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not the only one that's struggling or going through something, that we all do from time to time. And that's normal. And that's, the more we talk about that, the better that is.
I think that's even just that stat. I've never heard that stat that at any point in time, 20% are going through their own mental health challenge. So it doesn't matter what
Yeah.
they're showing on their face. In the room, 1 in 5 is currently having their own challenge.
Yeah.
And then you must go with the other 4. They must then know someone who's having a mental health challenge. So
Yeah.
it's
100%.
such
That's right.
relatable. Can you maybe share a story with us where you saw a real shift happen for an individual or maybe an entire group that you were in front of as a result of one of the sessions you were doing?
Yeah, I think it's happened, like not just once. It happens quite regularly where people have that shift or that realization. I'm sure you've seen it in business where you'll deliver a concept in a simple, articulate, relatable way, and you'll just see them maybe shift in their seats a little bit, and they're like, oh, or you'll get the lean forward a bit. They start to like really lock in and engage. And I think some of the shifts that I've seen happen is when when people realize that they're not failing, that they're just in overwhelm. And there are steps that you can do it. And it's a clear understanding then of why they were stuck. I've had people come up and go, I've been stuck. I didn't know what it was. I thought I was wrong. I thought I was failing. And now I can see the pathway out of it. So there's like that shift in confidence, posture. They can start to make some decisions then, because it comes down to clarity leads to behavior change. So once they start to see that path forward and know that they're not the only one, it's it's game changing for people.
Absolutely. So, you often speak about confidence, stress, and responsibility. So, why are these such critical issues, especially right now?
Well, I mean, take a look at the world. And look, it's probably always been similar, but just with the speed of information and internet, something happens anywhere in the world, we find out about it instantly. There's like 1,000 videos that go along with it. People are carrying like more responsibility now than they ever have. There's just so many things going on. So many things going on. Often they don't have the skills or the support to know how to handle, those things that are there. Um, Confidence comes from practice. Once they start to learn those tips, the things, stress is normal. People think that, oh, I'm stressed, there's something wrong. Unmanaged stress is harmful. It's just the ability to know, okay, what to do when I am stressed. What steps can I take? It's not that it's, oh, I'm stressed, therefore I'm sick, or I've got something wrong with me. It's like, okay, I can identify now that, yeah, I've got some stress going on, but there's so many steps and things I can take that can help reduce that stress, because we need it. We actually need stress to focus. And, which is why, like, when deadlines are approaching, most of us can get that ability to like really start to hone in and make those deadlines, because that stress is driving us. It's bringing our focus into a single point. And so, yeah, that along with early support changes like long-term outcomes. And so getting on top of confidence, stress, and responsibility matter like now, rather than don't wait, rather than waiting for those things to get worse over time to where it can become a mental illness.
Mm. It's right, isn't it? It's finding that balance of enough stress to get things done, but not so much stress that you're so stressed out you can't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Or then it can lead, because stress also leads to physical, which a lot of people don't realize is that it can directly correlates to heart disease, like is one thing, and just physical impact of stress is real. And so it's not just a mental thing, it impacts your body and everything as well.
It's incredible, isn't it? So, what from this is your topic and you've been around, you've seen a lot, but what do organisations often get wrong when they want to address mental health, and what should they be doing instead?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I see is that they focus on policy over people. And so they might hear coming down the line, there's the new psychosocial hazard code of practice, and we've got to get our compliance done. We've got to tick these boxes. So or they'll have like a workers' compensation claim for psychological injury. So then it becomes reactive or compliance driven approach. And so, and I think taking back to that one that we went to, that was a reactive compliance driven approach. And so that's why it didn't feel like relatable or real. And yeah, I think they might corporate more so. They're a bit disconnected from like the daily realities. So they see this compliance coming. Okay, we need to do this. We've got to look after our team. Okay, well, we'll get this person in to come and we need to train on psychosocial hazards. But they're reading from a textbook, or they're just going down that clinical, the jargon's there. And so it's like that awareness without the capability, I guess. Um, Whereas what works is building the confidence and the skills and teaching conversations, early signs, response, rather than that compliance and the just the reactiveness.
That's such a good point. So, I think you do this very well, but how do you balance that being honest and real without actually overwhelming the audience?
Yeah, yeah. That comes with practice, focusing on hope and agency. And so looking at it as like sharing with purpose, not emotional dumping. So if I'm telling a story, and I've got now that I've done like one of my presentations, like the awareness piece, it's like a 45-minute, 1 hour piece. There's a couple of stories in there that I've told like 100 times now. And so like I know what works without going too far. And then, some of the trainings I can walk up to that line of not creating, because I don't want people to feel sympathy for me. If I dump it all out, from the outside, that looks like I've had a lot of struggles, my family's had a lot of struggles, but you don't want them to feel that. You want them to see themselves in those examples without, like you said, I don't want them to become overwhelmed. So honesty is a good one. Honesty, I use that to create connection early, and then throughout, kind of, what does Donald Trump say? He calls it the weave. Move towards understanding, and then action from there. And so, yeah, people typically leave steadier, not heavier.
Oh,
Oh, I like that actually.
That
I'm
was
going to
a
write that
really
one
good
down.
one. I was like, have you ever said that before? Because I really liked that. I
No.
was like, that was great. Steadier instead of heavier. I mean,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah, I'm keeping that one.
that's a great one. So I've seen you in front of a really varied amount of audiences, and I've heard you talk about some of the people you're speaking with, and there's a pretty big range. But what types of audiences or events do you feel your work has the biggest impact for?
Yeah, look, spaces where like there's responsibility for others. So, which, typically is a lot of different situations. So workplaces, leadership teams, where there's management of people and or people are your resources. That's kind of a big impact, because we know that when leaders, especially when leaders and managers are trained or understand how to implement and handle mental health, that rolls out and it creates a culture change. Um, High pressure environments, so like mining, healthcare is a big one as well. Professional and small business. Small businesses are under the pump, under pressure, and so they're the types of organisation, and then the community groups as well. But the main focus is like the workplace and the leadership teams, where I think I can have the best impact.
What I like about what you're able to do too is that you don't just talk about this, you actually facilitate and train other people who are working, like especially in charity organizations. And I love the stuff you do with teenagers and helping them. Like you have a pretty big heart, Jodi, and you go out of the way to actually do good with what you do. Yes, this is your business, but you also do a lot of work on the side to help. Some of the stuff I hear when you talk about going into schools and things like that, and you're helping other people do the same. It's so commendable. It's so good, and it must be a different kind of joy to stand in front of a group of teenagers and help them see their way through.
For sure. Look, I'm fortunate that I've managed to lean into I guess my purpose, and develop that over time. And yeah, almost everything I do, other than the admin side of the stuff of work and the that crap that I'm not very fond of, delivering training and workshops, and whether it's in front of teenage. I mean, I've got 5 daughters, 4 of them are teenagers at the moment, so I can relate to them as well. But yeah, I feel connected and I feel on purpose when I'm doing that, and so yeah, I just absolutely love it. So and it's good that it has a really good impact, and people get benefit from it, and that's clear from the feedback I get. So it's like win-win, which is the best way.
I think you just made a really good point. I was just reflecting on, 'cause you're like me, you sit through a lot of conferences, a lot of events, hear a lot of speakers. I think that's the key, is when someone's on purpose, it's a it's such a better speaker. Like, I think back to all my favorite speakers I've ever heard, and it's like, you're right. They're on purpose. They're not just up there talking about a topic because, it's the latest thing to talk about. They're actually on purpose. Sorry, that was a little side note. My little lesson from listening to you talk.
Yeah.
So if you had someone in your audience and they could just take one idea from your talk and applied it, what would you want that to be?
Uh, Struggling doesn't mean weakness or failure. I think it's a big one. I think, like I said earlier, one of the biggest things I see is people think they're the only ones struggling, or they're the only ones going through it. And, you do like little things like this when you do an audience. You might get them to shut their eyes, ask a question, put up your hand if this, and everybody's hands up. That'll happen with the struggles as well. And so it doesn't mean weakness or failure. It just means something needs attention. And so if you're listening to this and you're feeling like you're struggling or you're feeling like you're a failure, none of that's true, but there's something there that needs attention. And that's where you need to start looking. So, it's stop judging, start responding. Because if, judgment is like a passive, we're just judgment, nothing's happening. If you start to focus, give it attention, then you're going to apply some action to it by responding. Meet yourself with clarity and self-respect. Better decisions follow from there.
That's such a good point. So I'm going to wrap us up here, Jodi. It's been such a pleasure and an honour to be able to be the person who got to ask you the questions today.
It's always fun.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone who's come to listen to the Gold Coast Speakers podcast. Of course, if you would like Jodi to speak at your next event here on the Gold Coast, and I can personally highly recommend Jodi as a speaker that will absolutely deliver to your audience, then just head over to the Gold Coast Speakers directory at goldcoastspeakers.com.au and you can find all the links and contacts for Jodi and a whole range of other speakers. So thank you again, Jodi, for allowing me to have this conversation with you today on what I think is a really important topic, and with your ability to share that to people so that they do feel like it's okay to be struggling. So thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks, Tracey. Appreciate the opportunity.
How'd you feel about that?